March 17th, 2019.
You can prepare for anything that you think might be coming, but Mother Nature always wins.
The Missouri River crested to a record-breaking 40.62 feet, sending floodwaters into the small southwest Iowa town of Pacific Junction. And the town is no stranger to flooding. 3 out of the top 5 historic crests along the Missouri River happened within the last 12 years.
The landscape has changed tremendous.
3 years later, the town has been washed off the map. The population has gone from 475 to 98.
Some of us have been here, close to 60 years. So I think it all depends on how deep your roots were.
Mayor Andy Young says he's never once thought about leaving Pacific Junction. He's been here over 60 years. He spends his days helping residents repair their homes.
Well, 3 years from today, I hope that we have enough structure and people to survive.
Heavy rainfall events are becoming increasingly common in Iowa as the climate warms, and farmers have to deal with it. In this special report, I take you to a Fayette County farm that is working on techniques that could help prevent floods downstream.
Part of adapting what Mother Nature is throwing at us.
No profession is as reliant on the weather as farming. And some are taking action to develop new ways to deal with the increasing heavy rainfall.
But when we start seeing these bigger surges of rain and stuff like that, we know this stuff is changing. I don't care what you call it, I'm going to adapt to it, and that's how we're going to keep farming. What you're seeing here is the normal platiness a soybean field would have, but now with the roots and the earthworms in there, you can tell how we're starting to rebuild all that.
In an effort to combat the increasing intensity of rain events, Steinlage's farm in Fayette County is experimenting with new ways of planting, using multiple crops through the year with overlapping growing seasons and multiple harvest times. This helps build root structure in the soil, preventing erosion of the valuable topsoil. This method also helps retain more water, preventing it from going downstream.
I'm right on the west side of town. This creek right down here flows through town. So if there's a problem here, I know I'm going to hear about it there.
With this relay cropping method, following harvest, a cereal crop like rye, barley, or oats is planted. This crop will grow very early in the spring, and they're planted in rows with space in between. Then during the normal spring plant, a crop like soybeans can be planted in between. There are many benefits of having this early season cereal crop already growing. The soil is stabilized, heavy rainfall is better absorbed to prevent muddy field conditions, which could keep equipment from planting, and the early season plant growth helps suppress weeds.
The litter layer here is what's breaking the rainfall's drop, keeping the soil erosion under minimum.
And of course, there's a financial benefit to it all as well.
And now with the relay cropping, we can actually turn the cash flow that it'd probably take 250 bushel of corn to get me excited about growing corn again.
This also has a benefit to those downstream of you, because when it comes to these excessive rain events, you're actually able to absorb more water during these high-end seasons, correct?
Yes, and I mean, we started noticing that 9 years ago, I think it was, we figured out that, our tile lines just don't run near as much, and when you start seeing some of that stuff, you start asking yourself, okay, what's different here than what's across the fence different?
The frequency of reaching major flood stage along the Turkey River at Garber, downstream of Steinlage's farm, is increasing rapidly. During the 2010s, the river hit major flood stage 7 times, more than double any previous decade since record keeping began in 1900, and with a rapid upward trend since the 1970s.
The largest tool that we have to combat that in our state is the soil.
Russ Evelsizer at the Northeast Iowa Resource Conservation and Development works with Steinlage to improve data sharing and to improve techniques.
It's way easier to stop a flood if you're catching the raindrop, so to speak, where it falls, versus at the bottom of the hill with, very expensive, man-made infrastructure.
And you're talking about being able to handle these significant heavy rain events, which are increasing by being able to absorb some of that water, but it also has a benefit on the other end of the spectrum in those drought years.
I think what a lot of producers are starting to look at is how to emulate their cropping systems more based on natural systems, where if it's a drought year, that's okay. And if it's a flood year, that's okay too.
For Steinlage, His goal is to educate and encourage other farmers to pick up this practice. He knows it's a slow process, but he's already seeing relay cropping pick up around his county, and he does not want to keep this practice to himself.
How do we help other guys learn this stuff without offending people? We've got to collect the data, share the data, and help teach other guys how to do this.
The past year has been a good example of the extremes we can see here in Iowa. We've seen drought and flooding impact farmers.
And it's certainly interesting to see how they're combating these different extremes. And Sarah, urban areas are also having to deal with these wild swings as well.
Coming up next, I'll dive into where the city of Cedar Rapids is at with flood mitigation and what lawmakers are doing to protect you.